Mr. Govin Ababu, Senior Academic at the Open University of Mauritius, will be chairing the session. And as I said before, if you have any queries, you can log on to menti.com. The details are on the screen, and you can then type in your questions after the keynote. Govin, you have the floor.
I have the immense pleasure of introducing my very good friend. We've been playing football at some point in time when at secondary school, and then we've gone, each one of us, we've gone our own way, finally to meet again. With over 20 years at executive level, Vidya is considered as a pioneer of the Mauritius IT BPO industry. He has been instrumental in the promotion and development of this industry, with a proven track record of building successful businesses in the tech space. Vidya is contributing towards creating a high-tech industry in Mauritius. Passionate about technology and innovation, he helps young people become digital entrepreneurs. Vidya is a regular speaker and writer on technology trends and their impact on the economy. And I understand also he is a member of the Council of the University of Mauritius. I am still wondering if you're still playing football. But anyway, I would like now to invite you for the keynote address.
Thank you, Govin, for this introduction. A very good morning to all of you. It's great to be here, and thanks to the organizing committee for having me. I want to spend the next half an hour, 40 minutes that we have to look at how this world is changing. I think it's good to understand the context. Whenever you want to lead, whether it's an organization, a business, or a university, it's good to understand the context that we are in. And the context today is significantly different to what it was when we all started going to school. And we want to reflect into this and see what are some of the challenges. And hopefully at the end, we'll have a few minutes to question, as we have many people from academia in this room, to question the purpose of universities, the demand of the society and students of the future. Are we ready to be disrupted as well, or can we start that disruption? So this is what I'm going to talk about. Yeah, what are some of the driving forces that are changing the world today? The kind of disruption that is impacting society and also influencing the future of work, and how we need as leaders, whether you're in private sector or public sector, how can we actually lead in this environment? And look at the higher education, and also look at Africa. We have many brothers and sisters from Africa this morning. So the four very disruptive forces that is changing the world around us. The first one is the industrialization and urbanization in emerging economies. 50% of the world population live in urban cities, and this trend is going to continue significantly and more rapidly. 65 million people are actually joining urban cities every year. The good news about this is that it's making infrastructure development much more efficient, which is great. But the challenge is the infrastructure and the ecosystem able to absorb that many people? 2.4 billion people will join the consuming class in the next few years. That's good news. If you're in business, you have more customers. And of the 2.5 billion or so people, about 2 billion of these people are actually from Asia. And many of those also are from Africa. If you look at the correlation between urbanization and GDP growth, you'll see on the chart on the left-hand side that it is closely correlated. So industrialization drives economic growth in the world. On the right-hand side, which is a very interesting chart, it shows where the economic power, the center of gravity of economic power started over the last, what I would say, since year zero, which is about 2,000 years ago. It started in Asia. Over the last 2,000 years, it went west and north. And then as from 1950, it's starting to move east and south. So if you're in business, or even if you're in university, this actually gives you an indication where the buying and consuming power in the future is going to be. So if you're a very North American-centric organization, you need to have a strategy to actually go more east and south in the future, because that's where the consumers are going to be in bigger numbers. And I'm going to share this. Many of you may have seen this, but that's, if you look at 2,000 years ago, the largest economic power in the world was India. Surprise, surprise, followed by China. And then as we progress with everything that happened in the world, we are starting to go back to how it was 2,000 years ago. So India and China are going to be the two biggest economies over the next 50, 100 years. And this means that it's great news for Asian countries, but also companies who have been very Eurocentric and North American-centric need to revisit their strategy in order to capture more economic growth as you line up your business more with Asia. The second force that is really disrupting this world is an aging world. The planet is getting old. People in many countries, the fertility rates has gone down significantly. You see the chart on the left has gone down across geographies, across regions. And in Mauritius, if you are from Mauritius, we are dangerously low. Our fertility rate, I understand, is 1.4%. We need to be 2.1% for it to be sustainable. It means that if we don't reverse this, either through increasing the fertility rate or through immigration, we run the risk that in 50 years or in 100 years, we are only 500,000 people in this country or 600,000 people. I don't think the authorities are taking this seriously. I don't think the communities are taking this seriously. But this is a significant issue for Mauritius. By 2040, 1 in 4 people will be more than 65 years old. In actual fact, in 15 years, there will be more people above 65 than below 14. It means that across the board, we're getting more old. And old people cost more money to the system. I think the two regions that is going to have a trend that is opposite to this is India and the continent of Africa. And what does that mean for Mauritius and Africans in general? If you look at the chart on the right-hand side, you will see if I pick China in 2012, in their workforce, they had 1 billion people. By 2050, their workforce is going to lose 150 million people. Now, there's a lot of debate in Europe, especially now with the European elections. People say, oh, the biggest concern of Europeans is immigration. But I can tell you, immigration is what's going to save Europe. And I hope that people understand. And I think even Mauritius, we need to open the country and be ready to accommodate more foreign talent to come to Mauritius. Yeah. So this trend is affecting many economies. It means that you will have fewer customers. If you are very much focused on one particular geography that is aging very quickly, you will notice that your customer base is going to be reduced year over year. And how do you, as a business, react to this? The third one is about the global interconnections. The world is so interconnected that if one region or one country get impacted, the other countries or other regions get impacted as well. If you look at Brexit is not only going to impact UK, but it's going to impact Mauritius, it's going to impact Europe and other regions. If you look at Greece, when they had financial crisis, it actually impacted the whole Eurozone. So you need to understand today that we are not independent in the way we do business, and that there is also an increase in cross-border flows and trade flows across the world. If you look at the chart on the right-hand side, you will see that in 1990, the interconnection of trade flows was about $1.8 trillion. But in 2013, this has actually, sorry about this. This has actually increased to 17 trillion. And you see the size of the dots, it gets bigger going to the east than it was on the chart on the left-hand side. So it means that the new world today is getting increasingly volatile. So when something is happening in one part of the world, we should all be concerned. It's not only their problem, and that's why I think on the general, the business and the leadership in the world need to be cognizant that if there is something that's happening in one part of the world, we should all try and do something to actually get this resolved. And the last one, which we are all impacted by, is about the disruption that technology is bringing. It's bringing disruption to education. It's bringing disruption to the way we sell, we market our business, and how we conduct our services. Technology, the difference today is that the speed of business, the clock speed has changed significantly. What used to take 20 years before can take only 2 years now. And are we ready as an organization, as a company, to embrace that speed? Most of these technologies, if you look at them, have been around for a long time. If I look at AI, if I look at 3D printing, they've been around for 50 plus years. But the difference today is that there is that convergence. All of these technologies have matured. And these technologies, with interconnectivity through the internet, are enabling us to actually do and achieve things much, much faster than ever before. And the adoption of this technology, we take a lot of it for granted through our mobile phone, but this adoption is almost instant. With the digital natives, the young people that are born today, they actually go and jump directly into this new ecosystem that is being created by the technology advances. And many of these, if you look at in terms of adoption, the chart on the right-hand side at the top, how long it takes to get 50 million customers. The radio took 38 years, Twitter took 9 months. And today you can have companies come on board and in a very short time have 100 million customers. In the past, it probably will take 3-4 generations to actually reach that customer base. It's no longer the case today. So what does that mean to us? There's a lot of opportunity, but also there's a lot of challenge. This digital disruption is impacting society and the future of work. I think the president mentioned that a lot of jobs will disappear. New jobs will be created. I'm an optimist. I believe that there will be more jobs created than lost, but we have to be ready for it. So digital disruption, I'll just use one definition here. It's not just about technology, but also about business model. This digital disruption is the change that occurs when new digital technologies and business models affect the value proposition of our goods and services, how we deliver our goods and services to the consumers, and how technology can enable this, and how can we change our business model to actually reach those consumers and creating a better experience for them. That's what it's all about. And Uber is probably the best case study to explain this. If you look at Uber kind of came around without really displacing cars or transportation. They actually created an industry by leveraging whatever was already existing. So if you look at the traditional taxi service, just kind of reflect on this, because if you understand the logic and the rationale here, then you can actually disrupt your businesses as well. So when you take a taxi, you have to go out. If you are in a foreign country, it's even worse because you don't have a clue where to go and wait for a taxi. And so you watch people, and people go on this street. So you go on this street, and then you raise your hand. If it's raining, you get wet. And then you ask the driver, I'm going to A destination. And the driver says, sorry, I'm actually going on the other side of the city, so I can't take you. Or you get into the car, and the driver don't know exactly where you're going. Takes a long time, go round and round. Or the driver doesn't have change, and you have to pay the driver, and the driver doesn't have a receipt. You are a business traveler, you need receipt to claim your expenses. So these were all the inconvenience that was, and still is, in the traditional taxi system. Uber, the two guys who founded Uber, actually experienced this. There were two Americans who went to Paris, and they were on a very cold night, and they said, I wish I could press a button and a taxi would turn up. And that idea actually germinated, and when they went back to their country, they sat together and say, how can we make this happen? And here we go, Uber is here, and Uber is actually globalizing in every part of the world. So what they did, they used the same cars, they used the same people, they only changed the journey. They re-engineered the business model. And now with an app, you can actually say which location you want, because the app knows exactly where you are. The driver knows exactly where you're going and won't actually come and pick you if he can't take you to that place. The driver also knows that he doesn't have to worry about receipt. He doesn't have to worry about change, because automatically the credit card is going to pay him. Yeah? Now, this is... We wonder, why haven't we thought about this? Yeah, we could have created a 40 or 60 billion company if we had done this. Yeah, I mean, that's how today I think a lot of us, we think in a very linear way. Yeah, we just try to do the old things a bit faster instead of saying, let's change the whole business model. Very often you hear the terminology, think outside the box. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I've used this. I've stopped using it now. I say, think as if there's no box. Yeah. Because very often what happens, we are conditioned by the box, and then we try to think outside that box, just pretend there's no box. And I think Uber actually pretended there's no box. And guess what? They've been able to create this. And that's what we're talking about. This kind of disruption that changed business model and use technology to enable it. Yeah. Now, the digital transformation is benefiting primarily the consumers. So the consumers is actually in the driving seat. Companies are having to re-engineer themselves in order to meet your expectation. In actual fact, the consumers today, they are building their own technology stack by the type of phone they use, the network they access, the application they use, and companies are trying to understand how you operate, how you buy your services, and they will re-engineer their business in order to capture you. So you're actually influencing beyond what you probably assume. Now, this was not the case 20 years ago. 20 years ago, businesses, they actually decided this is the best way to deliver that service and try to get you to buy it. Today, the world has changed. You are in the driving seat. And that's what this transformation is bringing. It brings a richer experience. Yeah, it creates data, and you can actually action. You get insights that you can use to bring actions. Yeah, it's creating new capabilities and also better economic expectations and opportunities. Today, if you're a young person, you can actually create an industry from your house. You don't need to have huge capital investment. You can actually create a lot of businesses like this. Yeah, you can get a partner on the other side of the world, working together to build a new business. That's what this transformation has enabled today. Yeah, it is increasing the engagement between your customers and the service providers. If I go back to the Uber model, whenever you have gone through a Uber drive, you can rate the driver. You can give the driver a 1-star or a 5-star. Now, if the driver doesn't get a 5-star, consistently get a 1-star, at the center, at the base, they will say there's a problem with this driver. We have to retrain the driver. We have to make sure the driver is more customer-centric. Now, this is changing behaviors. So it is bringing better engagement with the consumer and the service provider. And also it's making services more affordable. Now, if you look at a lot of the things today that we are buying is much more affordable. I mean, have you seen banks recently? Banks are bringing down their fees. Yeah. Why? Because there are disruptors out there that is waiting for them to get licenses to get you from the banks. Yeah. So that's why today there is the consumers are benefiting because the price of these services is going down. Yeah. So I mentioned about the speed of change. Yeah. It's much, much faster today. In actual fact, in the last 20 years, we have discovered more than we have discovered in the last 200 years. Yeah. In the last 2 years, we have created 95% of all the data that exists in the world today. This is the speed of change that we are talking about. The S&P 500 companies, which are the largest quoted companies on the US stock market, in the past, their lifetime was 90 years. Today, their lifetime is 15 years. Yeah, that's the change we're talking about, guys. Yeah. Obviously, I've talked about the maturing of new technologies, the convergence of all these technologies getting together with your mobile device, with cloud, with data, AI and data analytics, etc., and also the user experience. Yeah, I'm just going to go very briefly about these 4 industries. Yeah, and focus a bit later on the education one. Automotive. Yeah, if you look at the automotive industry today, it's being hugely disrupted. We're talking about driverless car. They say that by 2025, 15% of cars will be driverless. Yeah. Now, a lot of us might think this will never happen. Yeah, but it's already there. If you go to Silicon Valley, for example, you'll see a lot of cars going past and there's no driver in it. There's a lot of cameras, etc., that is directing those cars. And the interesting thing is that these driverless cars are safer than human-driven cars. Yeah? Now, I was having a conversation with one of the CEOs of an insurance company. And I'm saying, what do you think about these driverless cars? He said, you know, in the future, I think governments, I mean, you might think I'm crazy. In the future, governments will force people to use driverless cars instead of driving their own cars because it's going to be safer. There will be less death on the road, less accident on the road. Now, you might think this is utopia. I think it's going to happen because the data is there. Yeah? The Google car has driven 4 million miles since it started to be on the road and hasn't killed anyone. Yeah. When if you compare this with human-driven cars, there's much more calamities and death. Yeah. So automotive industry is changing. Now, the cars of the future will be an office. Because if you're not going to drive your car, what are you going to do in the car? You're going to actually work. You're going to actually do business. You're going to have connectivity. You're going to have Zoom or Skype. You're going to have all of this. So you'll be in your office in the car. So the car manufacturers is thinking about this. Yeah. So this gives us an idea that a lot of things that we have been doing in the past is going to change. Yeah. And the automotive industry is a big one. Okay. In actual fact, they said that the cars that we buy, we only use them 4% of the time, which is about an hour a day. Why would you buy an asset that you use only 4% of the time? Yeah. So there are a lot of people, they say that, oh, I won't even own a car. Yeah. I will just kind of use a car when it's available. Yeah. Okay. So what does that mean to car manufacturing companies? It means that they're going to produce less cars. Yeah. So all of these businesses are looking at those trends and they're having to change their business. Yeah. Banking and finance. Fintech, okay, is a big threat to establish financial services, organization, institutions, and banks. Banks today, you've seen the trend already in Mauritius that branches are closing big time. Most of the banks in Mauritius are closing branches because there's no future for bank branch. Yeah. Now, if you have been working in branches, guess what? They will ask you probably to go look for another job, which is already happening. Many banks in Mauritius are encouraging their staff to set up their own business, yeah, because the bank can't employ them anymore. Why? Because today you don't need to go to a branch to do banking. Yeah, there's going to be about 2.5 billion people in the next 20 years that is going to be coming to age to actually have a bank account, and 80% of these people won't even go to a bank. They will open their bank account on their mobile. Okay, so this is going to disrupt banks. That's why the CEO of Citibank said 30% of banking jobs is going to disappear in the next 15, 20 years. Now, if you're in the banking industry, what are you going to do? Yeah. So these are the kind of disruption we're talking about. And if you are in education, it's the same. Yeah. You have MOOC, you have online universities, etc. It's challenging the bricks and mortar universities. Are you ready to actually face this disruption? Okay, I'll come back to this in a few minutes. Yeah. And then there's healthcare. Healthcare has been probably one of the sectors that has been least disrupted so far. Very traditional, very conservative. But recently, it's really transforming. Many of us in this room have wearables. Yeah, we have these watches. The watches track how much we walk, how much we run, our blood pressure, etc., etc. Okay, and they say that some of these watches, the technology that these in the watches are as sophisticated as a heart monitor in a clinic. Okay, so actually your watch can actually tell you or predict that you may have a heart attack that the hospital cannot do because you only go to your hospital when you've already got a heart attack. Yeah. So guess what's going to happen? Now your doctor is going to rely on that wearable to monitor your health. Okay. Now, interestingly, what's happening also with pharmaceutical companies, you know, I think we all know this. Doctors don't want you to get well. Because if you get well, you stop going to them. Pharmaceutical companies don't want to bring medication that will heal people, because if their medication will heal you, you'll stop buying from them. So they make sure that there's a percentage of people who stay sick. Okay? Now, recently, they've been thinking about that business model. How are they going to change this? And they come up with a good idea. Now, it's still in the thinking process, but I think it's going to happen. Pharmaceutical companies will become like Google, like Facebook, and all these companies. They will subscribe. You will go to them and pay subscription. And that's how they're going to create a new revenue stream. And your subscription to them is that they will provide you with all the application and all the devices that they can monitor your health. Yeah. So you will subscribe to them. You pay, I don't know, $100 a year. Okay. And you have all of this equipment coming to you. And they will have their database. And they have experts that is going to tell you, one-on-one, this is your diagnostic. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to eat. This is the amount of exercise you need to do. And guess what, guys? These guys are going to change their business model completely. They don't need to continue making us sick. Now they have a different way of making money. Now, all of this is possible today with the technology that we have, yeah? Now, all of this, how are we going to lead in this disruptive environment, yeah? A lot of issues. I mentioned about this S&P 500, how slow they are, okay, to change. One of the biggest disadvantage large companies have today is they are so heavy and so big, they can't change enough. That's why startups are actually taking market share from them, okay? There's a lack of foresight. A lot of them think, oh, we're the biggest, we're the oldest, so we're always going to be here. And they don't actually see the newcomers. They don't actually see the new competitors on the scene. And then suddenly before they realize, it's too late, okay? It's like Blockbusters and Netflix. Blockbusters, used to rent videos. And when Netflix came, Netflix started to actually use streaming for films. And the founders of Netflix went to Blockbusters and said, hey, we would like to sell our company to you for $50 million. And they laugh at them. Blockbusters is dead. Netflix is worth $150 billion. Yeah? So that's a lack of foresight, yeah? And also the competitive landscape is changing significantly. I'm going to move forward, yeah? So these are the things we need to do, yeah? You need to look at your leadership. You need to probably change your leadership. You need to have computer-savvy people sitting on your board, young, dynamic, computer-literate people sitting on boards of companies, yeah? Instead of having all the 50-year-old and the 60-year-old, because these guys are experts of the past. They can't predict the future. You need to understand technology in order for you to actually drive business forward. You have to look at the skill set, yeah? Make people much more technology intelligent so that they can actually help you. Change management in a normal world fails. 70% of change programs fail in a normal, stable environment. Can you imagine what this is going to be in a very fast-moving environment? We need to think exponential, not just like 5% growth a year. You have to think about 15, 20, 30% growth a year. You need to build ecosystem and have partnerships. Partner with other companies instead of you trying to do everything yourself. Get the best of breed and partner with them, yeah? You need to come and cannibalize your own business. You need to create two businesses in one. One is the traditional business and create another business with a separate leadership to actually do things at a different clock speed so that when you're ready and proven, you can move your customer base to the other business. That's the only way you're going to survive, yeah? And then you have to leverage startups. Many of the Amazon and Google, they buy many startups every year so that they can leverage their technologies, yeah? I'm just going to go over this very, very quickly, yeah? Leapfrogging, Mark said, is means like looking at the most radical or the next big thing that you want to do, okay? You have to keep thinking about not just the incremental, but the really big leap. Push boundaries constantly. Steve Jobs was like this. His guys thought they did a great job, and Steve Jobs said, not acceptable. Go back to the drawing board. I think as leaders, we need to keep pushing our people. We should not be complacent about where we are. Yeah. Now, we have been successful, and I know in Africa, this emerges as a successful country. But guess what, guys? We need to keep pushing, yeah, because otherwise, other countries, other regions are going to take that position, yeah. Data. A lot of us say, even I said this when I started my career, I said, I do all my decisions based on hard data. I need data to make decisions. Now, this is partially true today because a lot of things, you need intuition to make decisions because a lot of things that you want to do, you don't have the hard data, yeah, because the environment is changing so fast, okay? You need to use surprise as a tool, yeah? Celebrate failures. Yeah, there are some business schools today. They will enroll people. Either you have a startup that is doing well,
or you have started a business and you fail. They want you to come because these guys know that you've learned things that you can share with others. Yeah. So in Mauritius, our culture is not like this. In the US, they celebrate failures. Yeah. Okay. Whereas in Mauritius, if you fail in a business, they will never give you another business to lead. Yeah. So that's kind of the kind of disruptive leaders we need. Yeah. Now I'll finish with the higher education piece. Yeah. Now higher education. 10 minutes. Higher education is at a tipping point. Okay. With all that I've said, we can't educate people the same way that we've been educating people in the last 100 years. It's not going to work. Yeah. We need more access. There are a lot of people in Africa that Africa is 2.2 billion people today. By 2050, it's going to be 2 billion. By about 2100, they're going to be 4 billion. How are we going to educate all these people? Yeah. So we need to think of new ways to actually get education to these people. Yeah. And also affordability. Yeah. You know, one of the professors from Harvard Business School predicted that 50% of North American higher education institutions will go bankrupt in the next 15 years. 50%. Okay? Because it's not sustainable. You've heard about student loans, etc., etc. Yeah? We need to create more STEM jobs for people. Yeah? And here there is always, I think the supply for this is 1% growth a year, and the demand is 2%. So there's a huge gap, an increasing gap between how much we as universities produce for STEM jobs than the world needs. And also we need to rethink how we prepare students and society for technological change. Yeah? So it's not just about giving people degree. In the past, you measure success of an institution by how many people pass the degree. I think we need to have outcome based. We need to know, okay, these students are going to come out. What are they going to create in this society? How much change they're going to bring. And I think a lot of us, we never saw education like this. Yeah. I think the role of universities is about preparing people and society through that disruptive world. And this means that we have to reimagine our curriculum. Okay? Now, maybe the 3-year full-time degree or 4-year full-time degree, depending on country you go to, is irrelevant today. Yeah? Because how do you think that you are going to educate a person for the first 20 years or 25 years of his life for the next 40 to 50 years that he will work? Doesn't make sense. I think there is going to be a trend towards you go to university, whether it's online, maybe online is going to be favored more in the future, okay? And then you go to work, and then you go back to school, and then go to work, and you go back to school, and you go to work for the first 20, 30 years of your career. That's the model we need, yeah? The model of, there is also criticism, I'm in technology. They said that when you go into doing your degree in computer science, by the time you graduate, most of the stuff you learn is irrelevant, is outdated. So why do we keep doing things that is outdated, yeah? I think we need to question this, yeah? Now, I know, guys, you are in academia, and I'm saying this, but because I think from a business point of view, the kind of talent that we need should be different to the kind of talent we used to have in the past. Because this disruptive world needs a new model, okay? We need to rethink the structures. There is so much silos even within universities. The computer science department need to work with all other departments because you can benefit. They need to sit in your meetings and know what are some of the struggles you have and help you. We need to have these boundaries more porous instead of being very siloed. And I think this means that we have to change how organization, how universities are actually structured, etc. And the model of engagement with the responsibilities of academia, industry, and government needs to change. Yeah? Okay? This means that today, businesses need to give time for people to go back to school. Yeah? Because that's the only way we're going to keep educating. I'm just going to finish off with this. Africa has got a big challenge. Yeah? Huge challenge. In Africa, there is not enough money because a lot of the people are in informal economy. If they're in informal economy, they don't pay taxes. Government don't have enough money to invest in education. And the population is growing very fast. There's a lack of teachers, lack of classroom, lack of content, lack of textbook. How are we going to handle this? Digital should be the future. A combination of digital and classroom. A lot of jobs need to be created. 18 million jobs need to be created every year. How are we going to give people jobs? We need them to go to universities. Yeah? And this is where the university model need to change. We cannot educate Africa in the traditional classroom format. And I think this is a huge opportunity for people in this room You can actually build your the next university to actually handle this kind of demand. And Africa needs knowledge workers. Just an advice, don't get Africa youth to work on all technologies and all manufacturing processes. The Americans predict in 20 years, through mechanization and automation, they are going to produce a T-shirt much cheaper than Bangladesh, than Africa. Why? Because they are focusing on technology and automation. Whereas many of the low-cost countries are focusing on labor-intensive model. So that's something that all of us need to think about, is you want Africa to be in the mainstream of economic prosperity. Yeah, middle class is increasing, demand on education with more better school, more accountability, etc. I talk about the urbanization and the use of technology. edX, you know edX? Yeah, edX today has over 15 million learners or students online, and they started in 2012. They add a student at no incremental cost. They design the learning experience on a personalized level. You learn anywhere, anytime, any format. They use robots, chatbots and robots to grade essays. It's not even a professor that is actually rating your essay. Can you imagine trying to rate 5 million students' essays? It will take you tens of years to do that, yeah. So that's the way, guys. I mean, there are other things I wanted to talk. My time is up. But I hope I have kind of get you excited, hopefully, that the opportunities are out there and we need to capture those opportunities. But if you thought that you are in a business that will continue the same way for the next 5, 10, 20 years, then I hope you realize that this is not going to be the case. Yeah? I'll pause here, yeah? Thanks. Govind, yeah? I've got some other stuff, but maybe we can take even questions, yeah?
Thank you, Vidya. Very provoking, your talk, I have to admit. While you were talking about healthcare, I was looking at my phone, which says 1,800 steps, 1.1 kilometer since this morning. And quite interesting, one flight climbed. So I think it's already many of us probably have this app on their phone, and so we have to anticipate what is coming next. We did suggest you to send your questions through the Mentimeter platform. I don't know if it's really working, but we haven't got any question. So we will be taking questions from the audience. We'll ask our colleagues here, my friends, to just pass the mic around for those who've got questions, and I'm sure there are plenty of them. So can you just raise up your hand, and we will give you the mic here. There's one, there's two. Okay, we can give the 2 mics to start with. Try to be not too long, so that we can give the opportunity to others to ask questions, and also for Vidya to answer your questions. Thank you.
All right, so good morning. I'm from the MGI and the IT department. One thing that has attracted my attention was the competitive forces of the industry that is providing nowadays. So I'm made to understand that nowadays the customers or your consumers will be in the driving forces of technology. With regards to, let's say, connected devices and Internet of Things and healthcare, do smartwatches or even self-driving cars will provide us a little bit more of security as compared to the emotional aspect or other aspects that humans do not create in general?
Is that a question, or is you making a remark?
Question, because how far can we compare the amount of technology or the decisions that these devices will make as compared to the human intelligence?
I don't think that technology is going to replace human intelligence. I think one thing I may have to add in what I said in terms of the reimagining curriculum is that while you need to probably have more computing in most courses that you do, you also need to teach human skills probably even more than you ever did, because this is going to be critical in the future. I think that
there is pros and cons, because recently somebody asked a question and said, mobile devices may be bad for your health. Yeah, your phone next to your head and next to your ear. I think my advice is don't put it next to your ear. Use your headphone, yeah, to phone. But we don't know yet. Okay. I think today what's going to happen is that our device will be our ATM, will be our bank, will be our doctor, will be our teacher, will be everything, guys. And whether we like it or not, it's already going in this direction, okay? And I think we need to know how this, obviously, in some cases, it isolates people. And this is where the human skills need to come forward, and how, despite of the fact that we spend too many hours on our mobile device, how can we engage socially as well, yeah? Okay? On the healthcare, I think it's good news. I mean, let me just give you a stat. In sub-Saharan Africa, depending on which region, there is between 3,000 to 100,000 people per doctor. In developed economies, there is a doctor for every 300 people. Now, how can you reach the people in Africa with limited number of doctors? So technology is the only way that we're going to do this, yeah? Okay? So I think a lot of what I'm talking about is actually going to solve a lot of societal and problems in many countries that can't today afford that many doctors. And I don't think that we can produce that many doctors in that short time. Okay? And also maybe I'll be even more provocative, yeah? To say, why do we think it takes 16 years of education to produce a doctor? Who decided this rule? Why do we think we need 2 years to do an MBA? Again, who made that rule? A lot of things that we have established for years that we copy, we continue. No one has actually questioned why we do it this way. Okay? Why do we have the classroom in the format that we have? If you look at the classroom format today, it hasn't changed for the last 100 years. And yet we say collaboration is the key. Yeah? So, guys, I'm just trying to, I may not have all the answers, but I'm just trying to get us to rethink and think together differently. Yeah? Thanks. Yes.
Hello. Thank you very much for your fascinating presentation. My name is Dusty Donnelly, and I'm from UKZN, from the School of Law. So the issue I'd like to hear your view on is whether you feel there's a risk that innovation is stifled by legal regulation. You mentioned the example of Netflix, so perhaps if you could comment specifically on regulation around data privacy. Netflix originally collected consumer data to fulfill orders to deliver your video online. But of course, as we all know, they then innovated by using that data to provide you with video recommendations, which customers find useful, but which is probably a breach of current data privacy regulations. So what is your view on how regulators approach these issues?
This is a very big topic, yeah? Data protection, privacy, etc. And I think that technology has gone much, much faster for regulation to follow. But I think today there's an acknowledgement that we need to strengthen our laws and our protection for the consumers. On the other hand, I think the consumers also need to be much more responsible in terms of providing information about themselves to the networks they connect. If you look at Facebook, people just put everything and anything on Facebook, okay? And then suddenly some of this information is actually used against them. I think there's an education for businesses, there's an education for society, and also we need to strengthen the law, okay? Now, on the law side, my suggestion would be, let's not over-regulate so that it kills innovation. I think there needs to be a great balance. If you look at the reason China has overtaken the US in terms of number of patents that they register every year, the amount of startups and innovation that China is moving much faster than the US. Why? Because the fact of that regulation is much more flexible in China. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I'm saying is that my ask to the leadership of nations, etc., is whenever you're looking at these laws, you need to make sure that you protect the people, not at the expense of killing innovation. Yeah. And also, I think it's creating new careers for lawyers as well, yeah? Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. You partially answered my question already, but I'll extend it a bit. My name is Jess Auerbach. I'm a visiting researcher at the Open University, but I did my doctorate at Stanford in the heart of this particular set of innovations. But one of the things that struck me then and strikes me now in your presentation is how do we take care of people? Because Uber is a very successful company on one level, but it's also notorious for not looking after its drivers very well. And in the interest of efficiency, you also then lose 100 years of workers' rights and workers' care. And as we have this massive demographic shift in terms of what people are doing, how will countries, particularly in the developing world, make sure that their workforces are protected and cared for?
Yeah, I think like every new innovation, there is, you have teething problems, yeah? And I think when they remove the horse carriages from the streets in London, because the cars are coming, I'm sure there were many accidents, okay? People learn from this because maybe the road was not well designed, maybe people were not well educated. I think a lot of this is happening, yeah? In many areas, when new technology come in, it creates also some problems. I think the reason is because it's going much faster than the ecosystem understand the impact and is able to actually put the right controls in place. Now, Uber's case, if they don't look after their people, what will happen? A competitor will come and look better after their people, and everybody will move from Uber to go to another company. I think that's the law of nature, or almost the law of economics. Yeah, if you as an employer are not taking care of your people will go and work for your competitors. Yeah, but this is a very common thread in all new innovation. Whenever you bring something new, there is always some concerns. People are going to say, oh, this is going to create a problem, or people are going to get sick, etc. But I think we have to manage it. Yeah, we have to be very open to actually recognizing there are issues and how can we overcome them. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to remind those who would like to send their questions, because we might not have the time to answer all the questions. You can go on to the Mentimeter platform. You've got the password. Send your questions, and we'll try to answer your questions. We've got one here. In the meantime, thank you for this thought-provoking presentation. With regards to higher education, how can we bridge the gap between academia and industry, given disruptive trends in technology?
Okay. This is a sensitive question, yeah? And I've said this to... I sit on the Council of University of Mauritius, yeah? And so I'm very connected with academia. My company has probably collaborated with more institutions than other companies, because I'm a firm believer that you guys, I'm your customer. It's not the students are not your customer if you're a university. The society is your customer. Companies are your customer. I think on your question, basically, what we need to make sure is that you find out why is there a disconnect, okay? Now, I met some folks from Babson College this year. Babson is the #1 in the world in entrepreneurship, education, better than Harvard and Stanford, etc. One thing that they do is that 14% of their lecturers come from industry. Yeah, 14%. Now, is it the right percentage, the right ratio? I've always said, even to University of Mauritius and some of the universities, that if you want to bridge the gap with industry, you need to have CEOs, venture capitalists, bankers who fund startups and lecture in your institution. Yeah? Getting the lecturers to learn how industry works is not going to solve the problem. Okay? Now, this actually brings a lot of change. It's not easy to implement. But to your point, we will always, and that's why you see some of the universities, especially in San Francisco in the West, they are so innovative. Because a lot of the education and the training is actually delivered by people who started businesses, failed, grew, globalized. So they actually tell the students how to do it. Yeah? And I think that's a very important, and again, it's disruptive in the thinking and the way we do things. Yeah? Hopefully, Govin, it was. an acceptable answer.
Good day. My name is Manglobo Kumede. I'm from UKZN School of Business. Your presentation is mind-blowing, mind-opening. I'm more interested on your recommendations or the way forward from the thoughts that you have put to us to think about it, more especially in terms of the intelligence that should be taught so that we can create more robots or we can work on the industrial or the fourth industrial revolution. And also, as we know that Africa is affected by the urbanization because of the demographic that we have, what recommendation do you have that we can implement in Africa so that people, they don't move to the cities? The last one, yes. And the last one, in terms of, I think you have touched it, in terms of bridging the gap between what academia is bringing and the industry. If you can just give the highlights, the two of each, what is your recommendations as the way forward? I thank you.
On the first one, urbanization, I think, is necessary. Especially if I look at Africa. Africa doesn't have wired country with fiber optics across the country. It's very localized. And the only way people can get access to connectivity, very often they have to come to the cities, yeah? And I think this is necessary for some time because of the efficiency of the investment. So if you're investing in connectivity, you're investing in data centers, by concentrating it in a city, it becomes cheaper per person in the country, rather than actually do it across the country. It will happen, but it will take a long time. Okay, so urbanization, as I showed you, is also correlated to economic growth. Okay, that's why you see the countries in Africa where urbanization is going very fast, their GDP growth is also higher. Okay, because Africa, many places don't have the choice. Yeah, because the investment is so huge. Okay. On the second one, in terms of bridging, I think, like I just said, I think the first thing is that the people who teach at your institutions, you need to have a proportion of them who come from industry. Don't just take people because they've worked in a company. That's not what I'm saying. You need to take people that know how to make innovation. Venture capitalists, yeah? People who fund projects, project managers. These are the kind of people who actually can come to university and actually show the students how to do business, how to set up their own business. Yeah. Now, maybe universities set a target to your students that before they graduate, they come up with an idea of their own business. So they have like 3 years. During that 3 years, they get mentored, they get coached, they get connected with industry on a project. Okay, so their thinking changes. They don't just learn textbook. They don't just learn material. So that when they are 3 years after they finish their studies, or maybe 4 years, they're ready. They are ready to hit this world. They probably have an idea how to change a company. Yeah, not necessarily their own business, but they can actually say, hey, now I know how to actually help this bank to be more innovative. But at least they get this 3 years to actually learn it. And then when they go to industry, the industry sees the value of these people that they can engage immediately.
You talked about organization inertia towards innovation and technology. What is your view in the current regulatory inertia towards tech and innovation?
It's a big issue, yeah. Now, another hat I wear is that I chair a committee at the Financial Services Commission called Digital Finance. It's kind of fintech, but it's a bit broader, okay? And I can tell you one of the challenges that we have had in Mauritius, I'm not sure whether the question comes from a Mauritian, about regulatory inertia. What's interesting is that in the past, the banks were fighting with regulators, yeah, all the time. Recently, they've become friends because they want to fight off the innovators, yeah? Okay? That's kind of an interesting observation. I think in terms of regulation, there is the fear of the unknown. The regulators, they are here to protect the citizens. They are here to protect institutions. Especially if money is involved, they have to be very cautious. Unfortunately, many people who sit on those boards, they don't understand this technology. They don't understand the trends. They don't understand the risk. And when the application comes, they go through it, and they say, I'm not too sure how this is going to be. Yeah, I'll just put it aside. So they don't approve it. I think this is a big issue. In other countries, what they've done is they make sure that they bring people from industry to actually look at some of these applications. Now, in Mauritius, they have the sandbox license that enable you actually to get started. Okay, hopefully you make your mistakes in that sandbox. But what I can tell you today, FSC and even the Bank of Mauritius, anyone from Bank of Mauritius here? They're much more open than they were a year ago. And I think this is a good sign because we know that this is our future. Yeah.
Very, very short question because we want to finish on time.
Mine is an observation, and if you do have a comment to make on it, so make the better. Technology should serve people. Technology is not there for its own, it's not there to serve itself. Now, if we look back at literature, 1984 was written by George Orwell, looking back at 1948. What had happened after the Second World War. We look at a novel by Yevgeny Zamyatin, a Russian, called We, where human beings are turned into automatons, machines, giving numbers, no identity, that kind of thing. We look at Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. All these novels were painting a picture of what we call dystopia, which is actually the opposite of utopia. Now, the world is developing in such a way that technology drives everything. But how central are human beings to the way things are going in the world, such that in the long run, we will not just be there and serving technology, rather than the other way around, that technology is doing things for us.
That's the danger. In actual fact, I was in a talk last year in Serbia with some university folks and also a lot of people from the tech industry. And this question came up. Are people actually using AI for destruction? The reality is yes. We haven't seen them yet. We know there are some people, some crazy people somewhere trying to use technology for evil, okay? And I think the role of authorities and people in government is to make sure that they are ahead of the game. That's why we need cyber security experts, etc., surveillance services. Because guess what? You can always, even without technology, people would have done it anyway. But technology actually helped them sometimes to provide the means to actually do it, yeah? So to your point, technology is today serving better the community than ever before. If I look at healthcare, is a big example, okay? A lot of lives are being saved with the kind of technology that we have today than ever before. But having said this, there is always going to be some crazy people. And these crazy people sometimes could be head of states, could be politicians, could be people in businesses, I don't know, yeah, that actually try to use this to control and do bad. So it's a never-ending issue, yeah?
Thank you so much, Vidya. We are going to overrun this session, and this is what we don't want to do. We want to stick to time. We've got a number of questions on the Mentimeter platform. Unfortunately, we'll not be able to answer. Either we answer all questions or we stick to Sejong. And we've decided that we're going to stick to Sejong. So thank you very much for your questions. Thank you so much, Vidya. Thank you so much, so much. Very thought-provoking. And I'm sure some of you who haven't been able to get your answers will be sitting next to you during lunchtime and get some possible answers. So, Suniti, over to you.
That was a most interesting keynote. Thank you, Mr. Monaghan. We will now request Professor Mutala to offer a shield to Mr. Monaghan. Professor Mutala. Mr. Monaghan, please. Thank you, Professor Mutala.